One speech down. Congratulations. Now it's time to get on number 2. The second speech in Com 231 public speaking is a chapter speech. This is an informative speech talking about concepts from one of the chapters in our textbook. Here are some example speeches that you can watch to give you an example of what the speech might look like. If you need help getting some sources, here are some books that are listed at the Durham Tech Library, as well as some electronic textbooks that you might use in order to help. You can also, of course, use your own textbook, The Art of Public Speaking by Stephen Lucas. So the chapter speech. This is an informative speech, again, designed to help continue the speech-making process by providing you with a clear topic and easy to find research material. Specifically, it's 4 to 6 minutes, so just a little bit longer. No visual aids are required. 2 minimum sources with at least 1 non-internet source. What I mean by that is I don't want every speech that you give to be quoting Wikipedia and howstuffworks.com. I want you to actually go out and find books, newspapers, magazines, etc. So at least half of your sources should be from non-internet sources. Now, if you found something from the Durham Herald-Sun website, that exists in a physical form, so it doesn't count as an internet source. So if you found 2 newspaper articles, both online, that's fine. What I'm trying to avoid is things like howstuffworks.com and potentially shady sites that maybe aren't the most credible. Again, complete details are in the speech packet, as you know. So let's take a look at the speech packet. So the chapter speech. Informing your audience about a public speaking concept from a selected chapter of our textbook. 4 to 6 minutes, no visual aids, 2 sources, 150 points. So this is worth a little bit more than last time because it's a little bit harder. Now, an informative speech should provide information that in general helps the audience understand concepts, objects, people, places, etc. Now, they do not try to persuade their audience to change their understanding or convince them to do something. You're just informing your audience. Now, obviously, informing your audience is helpful to persuasive speaking later on, which is why you have a persuasive speech later on in this class. Now, chapter presentation is an informative speech, again, about concepts that should help clarify, explain, or define key terms and ideas. The speech preparation outline requirements are the same, full sentence, etc. So here are the Lucas chapter assignments. Now you'll notice that there are X's on 2 specific chapters. This is because, in my experience, these aren't really good chapters to do speeches on. The first is chapter 4, giving your first speech. It's really very brief, so there's not a lot of information to go on, and more or less that information is repeated elsewhere in the textbook. So please don't do your speech on chapter 4, giving your first speech. The next one is using visual aids. Now this is actually a great topic, but I haven't taught you how to use visual aids yet, so it's difficult to give a speech on using visual aids if you haven't learned how to use visual aids, so we're just going to skip it. But there are plenty of chapters that you can choose. Any one you like. Maybe you want to talk about outlining the speech or delivery or speaking in small groups. Any of those are totally fine. Once you select your chapter, you'll take a look at the speech evaluation form, the rubric. Again, this is exactly what I'm going to be grading you on. Your preparation outline, it's still a big deal that you get this right, so it's worth 40 points out of the 150. The introduction, again, it's important to get people hooked early on, to tell them where you're going, what they're going to learn, 40 points. Structure, organization, and support is worth 20 points. Delivery is now worth 20 points, so I'm ratcheting it up just a tiny bit. Your online presentation is also worth 20 points. and the conclusion is worth 10 points. The time penalty and the late penalty are also up to a 10% deduction. So here is a sample chapter speech preparation outline on using visual aids. I wrote this one. So you start with the specific purpose, to inform your audience on using visual aids for your speech. Your thesis statement would be using pictures or other visual aids in your speech can increase the effectiveness of your speech. And of course you want to include the YouTube link if it's an online speech. Moving into the introduction. Have you ever heard the phrase, a picture is worth 1,000 words? Well, using pictures and other visual aids in your speech can increase the effectiveness of your speech. I've researched this topic and will present information from 2 public speaking textbooks on how to best use visual aids. Today, I'll talk about using visual aids as part of your speech. We'll learn about the types of visual aids, as well as when it's appropriate to use visual aids. So that would be your introduction. Short, sweet, to the point. Now, I didn't label the attention getters, the credibility statements, etc., but they're still there. This is, again, a very short speech talking about the 3 main types of visual aids. You'll notice that here it's written down according to Stephen Lucas. Unlike a paper where you put sources in parentheses afterwards, you want to orally cite your sources in the speech. Again, I can't see your outline. Well, I can see your outline, but none of the other people that see your speech can see your outline. So you have to actually tell them where the information is coming from. Elsewise, you might be passing it off as your own, and that's a form of plagiarism. Again, you've done the research, so tell people that you've done the research. So according to Stephen Lucas, there are 3 main types of visual aids. That's one way to cite a source. Another is in the textbook Communication Daily. Jess Wood says there's 2 times to use visual aids. Teachers use it in a classroom, or business people use it. And notice that there's also a 1, 2, 3, no lonely subpoints here. Concluding, etc. You have to have a works cited page. You can either use APA, you can use MLA, I don't care. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just try to make it consistent so that if I wanted to go back and look up your source, I would be able to. Here is a sample chapter speech preparation on ethics to inform my audience about ethics in public speaking. The thesis statement is following ethical guidelines when delivering your speech can help boost your credibility as a speaker. Now, the ethics chapter is probably something that I spent 10, 15, 20 minutes telling you about. But this speech is a lot shorter. So your point is not to say everything that happens in the specific chapter. The point is to talk about a few specific things and to teach your audience about that. Now, the reason that we have the chapter speech is 1, because I'm more or less giving you a lot of the research that you need, or at least pointing you in the right direction. And 2, you're probably going to be doing a presentation of some kind at some point during the rest of your career, either at Durham Tech or wherever you might else go on to in your education field. Because this is something that you can use, we're easing you into this chapter presentation that way. Again, this is an excellent way to cite your source orally in Stephen Lucas's book, The Art of Public Speaking. So I know exactly what it is you're talking about and where you got that information. Here's another great example of citing your source orally. In the book, Stand Up, Speak Out, The Practice and Ethics of Public Speaking, it talks about the ethics pyramid. And this is actually something really interesting because the ethics pyramid isn't covered in our textbook. Another cite of the source of Stephen Lucas. Great. And then, of course, the work cited. And then special thanks to my student for allowing me to use her outline there. Here is another sample speech preparation outline on delivery. Again, giving you examples of what the introduction might look like, what the body might look like, including transitions. Again, in the textbook, The Art of Public Speaking, that's our textbook. Feel free to use it. Christine Fierro, again, citing another source, as well as the work cited here. So here are some examples of the chapter speech. Now, of course, you can also go back and see some example speeches in the actual lessons, just to give you, again, some example of what's expected from you from the chapter speech.